Welcome to It's a Woman's World. Today we have a really special treat. We have with us Laura Hlavac, and she is a fashion designer. She's going to tell us a lot about fashion, how it relates to our confidence, how wearing the right clothes, the right fit makes such a difference in our confidence, our belief in what we can do, and just even our presence as we walk in a room. So, with that, I'm going to introduce, first of all, the co host, Jamila. Jamila, it's so good to see you today.
Yeah, good to see you too, everybody. It's good to be here.
And Barbara, how are you today?
I'm great. Looking forward to asking Laura some questions and finding out more about her amazing career.
Okay, and with that, Laura, I'm going to tell the people just a little bit about you. I'm going to read this. Laura has been or is a seamstress, a business owner as a fashion designer, singer, songwriter, athlete, mother, and more recently, an instructor of fashion design at St. Catherine's. Laura knows the dedication it takes to create your own business, as her fashions have been sold both nationally and internationally. So, welcome to the show, Laura. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm going to ask you the first question. What inspired you to go into fashion design?
Well, actually, since childhood, I started sewing when I was about 12, and it just became my thing. I just loved doing it, and I sewed for my friends and family. And my whole youth, I have my friends had told me, "Oh, are you gonna? You got to be a fashion designer." Blah blah blah. And I never took it seriously. In fact, I started engineering school at the University of Minnesota. 2 years into that, I met a girl who was getting her degree in fashion design. And I looked at her projects and I just realized how much I missed sewing and I went to, in a way she was like a mentor. When you see someone else doing something and it can instantly inspire you and realize that there that you can do that too. And I never considered fashion design as a real career. I mean, it seemed so unreachable. But I switched my degree and I got my fashion design degree from the University of Minnesota. And I kind of jumped in and found opportunities to do sample making and pattern making. Um, the skills that I developed sewing served me well. And I was sort of unique in the Twin Cities because back in the day, there used to be a huge garment industry here. Um, but over the years, as things transferred to overseas production, the Twin Cities was one of the first cities to really lose our domestic production. So there weren't a lot of resources and skilled people. And so I found avenues where I could start getting my foot in the door. And then through that, um, I realized there was manufacturing opportunities. And the companies I worked for at the time were Rollerblade. They were adding soft goods clothing to their hard goods line. And they were just sort of, I got to be on the ground floor of that. And that helped a lot when you can get your foot in the door, right? When they're starting something new. Same thing with Nordic Track. I did a clothing line for them. And then Kawasaki America, I had a really nice contract with them, designing and developing um, a small collection of clothing that was used as a giveaway for a early buy incentives. For example, if you bought a jet ski by June 1st, you'd get this cool outfit. So those were some of my earlier projects that got me started. And then from there, at a certain point, I realized that it's my turn. So I had already started developing a line of clothing for myself as a stay-at-home mom that had to go to meetings, had to go to school, and had to be able to run out to the grocery store and feel comfortable and look good. And at a certain point, people were saying, hey, where did you get that? And oh my gosh, that looks so comfortable. And I just realized, I had been doing this other contract work for 10, 15 years. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to start dabbling, start working with some boutiques. So I started pushing out some of my designs and it just kind of started working. Um, my experience with these athletic clothing companies pushed me into knitwear. And there's really two different worlds in the sewing world. There's wovens and there's knits, the non-stretch and the stretch. And if you take a sewing class or you have a home sewing machine, that's well suited for non-stretch fabrics. Stretch fabrics are a whole other animal. And I became an expert young, which really helped catapult my career. I was able to get an internship at a small bicycle clothing manufacturing company in the Twin Cities. And I learned how to use specialized equipment for knitwear. It was all industrial. So I learned it was such an advantage to work for a small company because I got to do a lot of different things and I got to sit at a lot of different machines and learn that, wow, I can do this. So that sort of got me into the stretch clothing world. And so then I took that idea and I thought, hey, let's make some career wear or make some athleisure wear. I'm kind of known for my athleisure clothing. Um, and I also knew from experience and dabbling and experimenting as a sewer myself, which fabrics stretch the most and have the most memory. And my trade secret was basically my line was focused on the fabric that we call a rib fabric. Okay, a rib fabric has tremendous amount of stretch because it's usually used on turtlenecks and cuffs. And the reason is because it's knit structure. And then if you add Lycra, it even has more stretch and retention. And so you can stretch it a lot and it comes back. And most companies, I started using this particular fabric in the bodies of my tops, leggings, and dresses. No other manufacturer was doing that. In fact, I was amazed because and this is partly why I was started sewing for myself because I couldn't go out and buy the most comfortable stretchy clothing that I wanted to wear. And that's really what put me on the map. And
That's so
then
cool, Laura. That is so cool. I mean, you have so many different ways that you have been inspired to jump in and do fashion. And it's just always been in your blood. Is there anyone else in your family that is a seamstress, that loved fashion, that put clothes together, that fell in love with materials? Where did you get this from, this love for fashion?
It's funny because I never really thought I was in love with fashion
Mm.
in the early years. It was the craft, it was the sewing that I loved. But that, of course, just led to the appreciation of style. And, because I made my own clothes and I made my own decisions, I just kind of evolved into that designer title. But one day when I was 12 years old, I asked my mom, will you show me how to use your sewing machine? And she said, sure. Here's forward, here's reverse. See you later. And I became self-taught. And I will say that commercial patterns, it's kind of funny, but commercial patterns are excellent teachers. Their instructions are very good, although I am told that the more modern patterns are not as good because they rely on AI to do many of the instructions. And I have found mistakes now that I have started to look at that. So, but it is what it is, right?
So mom she sat you at the sewing machine, and that is where the passion began.
It is, yeah. And you know
Yes.
what? I design from the sewing machine. A lot of my iconic looks are because I was sitting there going, okay, like for example, in the beginning, I couldn't afford so the women's wear industry is very driven by prints, okay, which we love. Prints are amazing. And I did a lot of prints eventually, but in the beginning, I really couldn't afford prints because they were more expensive. You had to buy larger quantities at a time. So I was, plus my rib fabric was only available in solids. So I thought, okay, how can I make a solid fabric exciting? And so I started playing with the sewing machine, and there's a machine called a cover stitch. It's a double needle on top, and then it does sort of like a serge zigzag on the back. And if you can see what I'm wearing, I'm going to bring up to the camera.
Yep.
So this is like, this is what I call my DNA stitch. And it's like a little, I got it down the arm too.
Mhm.
And it has become a huge signature of my product line. And to this day, when people see that DNA, and if you see it in the boutiques, you're going to say, "Oh, I know the designer." And it just stuck with me. It was a successful look. It was extremely a simple thing, but that machine was it's actually made for hems and waistbands because you'll see it if you're wearing a
Yes.
t-shirt
Yeah.
or any kind of knitwear. Just look at the hem.
Yeah.
You've seen it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. And I decided to use it in a more decorative way. And so that helped me establish one part of my look.
I'm interested in, no, I am not. First of all, I'm going to jump way ahead in your life and in your career. But I do want to step back and say I too learned on a treadle sewing machine with my mother instructing me at about the same age, and have sewn many, many clothes and all the clothes for my daughters when they were young. But what I'm interested in hearing about is you have sold to over 500 boutiques. How do you go from, you know, locally, Minneapolis, St. Paul region, to 500 boutiques around the country? That's
Excellent
a
question.
business question.
Yeah, no. Um, Simply put, industry trade shows are how I grew my business. So I
Of course.
started out doing the local shows, and there's a couple of them that they do about 5 times a year, and it's a 3-day show. And you go and you pay, your booth cost is probably, I'm thinking it was about $700 for 3 days
Mm,
for the local show. And that seemed, uh, you know, that's actually a bargain compared to the national
yeah,
shows. Okay, the national
yeah.
shows are about 10 times that. But I also did national shows. So, it's when it comes to marketing, I believe it's you pay to play.
Yeah,
And so,
very good.
when you're in the boutique world, the newer uh the newer booths are noticed and people are curious and you have a little bit more visibility. And yeah, I just started getting a couple new clients that way. The national shows, though, were far more productive than the regional shows. The regional shows, they're a little wary of the new people too. So there's
Mm,
interesting political dynamics that go along with this too. But the biggest shows are like Vegas for Fashion Week.
mhm.
They do it twice a year, and it's about $6,000 to do a 4-day show there. And the first show I ever did, I came back home with about $45,000 in pre-orders. And what's nice about doing business that way is you get your orders ahead of time, in time to then give your factory the orders and make them. And then, I mean, you have about 4 to 6 months to ship. So, worked out really well that way for me. And then
Great.
I did shows in Dallas, Atlanta. The other thing about shows is not just selling your clothing, but you need to, the typical way to do business is to use clothing reps. Although a lot of that is changing now because the internet, of course, has just blown that
Yes,
model wide open, and it's
right.
actually becoming more difficult to do business this way. So, but the traditional way of doing business is to get clothing reps. And it's actually quite easy because they make it easy at these shows. If you are a new booth, it is noted in the books and the reps come to you. I had 4 Midwest reps fighting over my line I mean, it was crazy. But that first show, I gained a Colorado rep, and the reps usually represent about 5 states at a time, give and take. And they also represent they can represent 4 to 10 other lines, which has its advantages and disadvantages, right? Because they're going to take your new line and they're going to really pump it out to their clients because they besides the shows that they go to, um, they also become a lot of them are traveling salespeople. So they put their lines in their van and they just go and visit all these stores. And when you go into a store and visit the stores, you're sure to get the orders, especially when you have developed these relationships. And that's how that business works. And that's what's helped me get to that 500 mark.
Thank you.
So too, when you said that, COVID had to be really hard on your business, your clientele. I mean, because you just said that, people come into the store and of course there it is. And I have some of Laura's designs and absolutely love them, but, and I can recognize them as well. But all of a sudden COVID happened and, people weren't going into the stores. What did you do during that time?
Yeah, everyone in any kind of business, any retail business, we all have a COVID story, of course. And so, I mean, that is going to be the pinnacle point of time that we compare life, right? Before and after COVID, because that changed everything. It catapulted the popularity and the ability to buy more things online. So, I spent more time on my online presence. Of course, I was making fabric masks. I had them 3 months before Amazon had them. So I made tens of thousands of masks. And my retail customers, a lot of them survived by selling masks also because I had them so early. So I mean, that was a crazy time for me. Just as a matter of survival, the masks kept me going. Coming out of COVID, it was a lot of work to reestablish who's going to make it and who isn't. I mean, a lot of my customers, I have watched them in the last since 2000 since 2020. I've watched some of them went out of business right away. Others fought for a couple of years and went out of business. And I mean, I've been just watching the chips fall. So I have been working on diversifying my income stream accordingly. And I'm happy to say I'm teaching at the college, like you said. That's just been a wonderful opportunity for me to share my knowledge. And I still continue. I have shut down my overseas manufacturing. I do still work with sewers in town. I also have been doing some commissions in one of a kind. So if I had a piece of advice about how to survive those kinds of things, diversity of income stream is really important. I still have my website and I still have some inventory. So I'm trucking along.
And it sounds as though you're creative in all facets of your life, not just with your hands and your mind of the creativity of the clothing, but you're also a creative singer. You're an artist. You are a vocalist. You get out before the world and give, your creativity in all the different ways. If you were, a young girl, as a lot of our young women who watch our show, they often get inspired by all the different ways that we seasoned ladies are multifaceted. How would you, when you talk about having more than one stream of income, what would be your word of advice for a young woman who has all these creative ideas and might be just afraid to step out in faith and let their creativity bring in income for them, and not just hobbies, but actual ways to really use their creativity to bring in economic success?
Yeah, that is a trick, isn't it? And it's the scary part. And my advice would be to just be bold
Mm.
and try, don't be afraid to try things and don't be afraid to, number one, go super high end. I mean, the beauty of our modern day is that, and I think about this a lot, when the internet first came out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am now living in a time where I can take a design that's in my head, I can cut and sew it in, and then I can show it to the world in one day. Now, of course, it sounds grand and practically, how do you get it out to the world is the big trick. But we have those tools. We can do it. Um, but turning things into income making is the trick. And
Yes.
my number one piece of advice to any business person is network, 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 because everything that has ever brought me success is from a personal connection for the most part. I mean, getting out and doing shows and meeting new people, that's important when you know where to go. I would say define what you love to do the most. Get some experience doing that, and you'll meet people in that field that are also interested. And then sometimes that might you might come across somebody that you can partner with, someone that knows someone else that you might have a connection to. The one thing that I could have done better in my career is I started out a little too bold in my youth. I wanted to work for myself and I just started right out of college. And I had some lucky breaks, so it really was working. But when, I've been in business 30 years, so I've seen the economy go up and down a few times and I've suffered accordingly, of course, like all of us have. And those were times when I wished I had some better connections, which I could have made had I gotten more experience right out of college instead of starting my business right away. And again, I'm not saying I have regrets. I'm just saying my advice to someone new coming into this field would be get some experience with some companies, meet people, network, talk about what you want to do. And somehow those people have a way of finding you when you put yourself out there.
That's good. Thanks, Laura.
Or I have a question that's kind of out in left field, maybe, but I'm fascinated by certain fashion trends. I do not understand the years long now fashion trend of jeans with holes and straggles and whatever. I don't get that. And I don't know if it's an age thing or what, but I wouldn't have been caught dead wearing something like that when I was 50.
That's a funny thing when you talk about trends because in the beginning, once again, I was really bold. I was like, I'm not going to follow the trends. I'm going to do my own thing and create my own look, which I did. And it did serve me well. And I don't believe you always have to follow trends. And the reason there are trends, there's one reason only, and that's it's defined as planned obsolescence. If there are trends that keep changing, you have to keep buying, 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 buying. And that's what has created a world of overconsumption. And that's the other thing that I can't talk about what I do without talking about the fact that we have overproduced so much in the apparel industry, so much that we have destroyed a lot of small artisans in third world countries because what's happening is when you donate your clothing, it doesn't all get sold at that thrift store that you donated. It goes into other locations that get baled up into these huge 100-pound bales that get shipped off to third world countries like Chile and a lot of South American countries, African countries, and they are picked up and bought by small people, small companies or individuals. And a lot of them used to make clothing and make a living at it, but now you can't afford to do that because there's all these big bales of Western clothing coming in. So you buy a big bale and you sell it at your market. And then whatever doesn't sell there ends up on the beaches polluting the waters. And it's a very big problem that we talk about at the college a lot because we have to start looking at that. Just my own experience in this industry, everyone overproduces. I overproduce because it's like to be in business, to be an optimist, you have to be a little bit of an overly optimistic person to be an entrepreneur. Um, you're going to project higher sales than you might get. Every once in a while something will take off and you might be, playing catch up. And that's the best thing that could happen. And again, in hindsight, I wish that I would have produced a little bit less in some seasons and let things sell out. Because that creates another kind of demand, and it's also more responsible manufacturing. So trends, I don't like trends. And the thing is, trends are fun. The thing is, they're almost meaningless now because we have the internet, and just think about this. If you walk down the street, there is not a single look that you can wear where people are going to be looking at you strange, because we live in a time where you can create your own style. It can be vintage. It can be holes all over your jeans, which a lot of people like. That's great. It's just a fashion statement. It does, it's just it's a whole different, really a whole different conversation, but it's so interesting, isn't it? But yeah, the bottom line is it's made to continue to generate sales for the big clothing companies, for all the clothing companies, of course. But I did, every once in a while, like I would see a trend like the cold shoulder thing. That was like, I would define that as a more modern, new look that we hadn't seen when it came out. And it was wildly popular. And I didn't do it, not because I didn't love it, but so many people loved it. I just thought, you know what, there's enough people doing it. I'm just gonna avoid it. There's enough of that out there. So that's my thoughts about trend.
Gotta wrap this up.
Oh, goodness.
Would you believe we got 1 minute left?
Oh my gosh.
If I was going to say anything, Beverly, it would be what you started with, clothes and confidence.
Yeah.
And really, if you feel confident, I would like to say it doesn't matter what you're wearing, but if what you're wearing gives you confidence, it's a big deal.
Yes, very good. Yeah. And so with that we're out of time. Jamila, thank you for asking the wonderful questions you did. And Barbara, and my goodness, we could talk to you forever, Laura, but you are such an inspiration to so many. I know you mentor many. They're lucky to have you at the college teaching what you are teaching. And I want to thank you for being our guest. This has been a really fun program. Thank you again, Barbara and Jamila. And viewers, I hope you picked up some good tips today too. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on It's a Woman's World.